In the shadow of giants like Benz and Daimler, there was another name that sparked a legacy just as powerful: Karl Rapp. He wasn't a household name, and he never lived to see his company dominate the world. But his daring leap into aviation engines set in motion the story of BMW. From a modest Munich workshop came a dream of power and flight, a dream tested in the fire of World War I, where engines either soared or failed under pressure. Alongside him was Gustav Otto, son of the man who invented the four-stroke engine, whose own path in aviation would collide with Rapp's in a twist of fate. Together, their struggles, failures, and ambitions laid the groundwork for a transformation. Rapp Motorenwerke became Bayerische Motorenwerke, BMW, a name destined to outgrow its humble beginnings. Guided by visionaries like Franz Josef Popp and Max Friese, the company turned setbacks into triumphs, building the iconic BMW 3A aircraft engine, the revolutionary R32 motorcycle, and eventually cars that became symbols of luxury and precision. This isn't just the story of a company. It's the story of how vision, persistence, and resilience created an empire that outlived its founders and continues to shape the road ahead. In the closing years of the 19th century, Germany was a land of invention, a place where engineers dreamed of conquering both the earth and the skies. Among the thousands drawn to this age of industry was a young man named Carl Rapp. Unlike the famous inventors whose names filled newspapers, Rapp lived in the shadows of factories, workshops, and airfields. But it was within those shadows that the spark of BMW's story was born. Carl Rapp wasn't born into wealth or privilege. He wasn't a celebrity of his time, and he didn't have a last name that rang out like Benz or Daimler. What he did have was a fascination with machines, especially engines, that could transform motion itself. From an early age, he was captivated by the idea that metal, fire, and fuel could be combined to produce something alive, something powerful enough to carry man further than his legs or even horses ever could. By the time he became an engineer, Rapp was working in an era when aviation was still a daring gamble. Flying machines were fragile, experimental contraptions, but they needed one thing above all else: engines that could keep them in the air. This challenge called to Rapp like a siren song. He poured his skills into designing power plants, determined to give wings the strength they needed. Though history doesn't remember his personal life in vivid detail, we know his career was shaped by grit and determination. Rapp was not seeking fame, he was chasing innovation. It was this mindset that led him to take one of the boldest steps of his life, leaving behind the comfort of stable employment to start his own company. That leap of faith, born out of pure belief in engineering, would become the foundation of one of the most iconic brands the world has ever known. By the early 1910s, Carl Rapp had already proven himself as a capable engineer. He had worked in various factories, learning the delicate balance between design and performance. But while others were content to stay in secure jobs, Rapp was restless. He saw the rapid growth of aviation and knew that engines would be at the heart of it all. If Germany wanted to compete in the skies, it needed power plants that could deliver more than just reliability. It needed brilliance. Rapp believed he could provide that brilliance. In 1913, with little more than ambition and technical skill, he made the daring decision to step out on his own. That year, in the heart of Munich, he founded Rapp Motorenwerke GmbH, a company dedicated to building aircraft engines. It was not an easy leap. Starting a company required funding, confidence, and the courage to face failure. But Rapp had something most others didn't: a clear vision of what the future demanded. Munich was buzzing with energy at the time. Engineers, machinists, and inventors all crowded the city's growing industrial district. Rapp's workshop stood among them, small and modest compared to giants like Daimler or Benz, but brimming with determination. His engines weren't perfect at first. They were plagued with issues that often frustrated both him and his customers. Yet every failure was a lesson, every setback a push to refine his designs further. For Carl Rapp, this was not just about running a business. It was about answering the call of progress. He wasn't chasing profits as much as he was chasing potential. By founding Rapp Motorenwerke, he planted a seed that would one day grow far beyond his own expectations. At this moment, though, he was simply a dreamer turned entrepreneur, building engines in a small Munich workshop, unaware that history was already moving in his favor. When Karl Rapp officially opened the doors of Rapp Motorenwerke in 1913, he stepped into a world racing toward the future. Airplanes were no longer just a spectacle at fairs. They were becoming serious tools of exploration and war. Every nation with ambition was investing in aviation, and Germany was no exception. Rapp saw this as the perfect opportunity to carve his name into history, using his engines as the wings of progress. The factory he built in Munich wasn't grand. It wasn't filled with the endless machines and workers that defined industrial giants. Instead, it was a modest operation, fueled more by determination than by resources. Yet its purpose was clear: to design and manufacture aircraft engines that could keep Germany at the forefront of flight. For Rapp, every bolt, piston, and cylinder was more than metal. It was a piece of his dream. But dreams don't run smoothly. His early engines, though innovative, often suffered from reliability issues. Customers complained, and contracts were difficult to secure. Larger companies had the advantage of resources and reputation, while Rapp had only his resolve. Still, he pressed forward. Each problem was met with tireless effort. Each failed design a lesson carved into the foundations of his company. Despite these challenges, Rapp's workshop became a small hub of energy. Engineers and mechanics worked side by side, driven by the belief that they were part of something bigger. The roar of testing engines filled the air, a sound that, though imperfect, symbolized hope. Rapp Motorenwerke was not yet a powerhouse, but it was alive. And in that life lay the seed of a company that would one day redefine luxury, performance, and innovation on wheels and in the skies. As the guns of World War I thundered across Europe, the world of aviation was transformed from a daring experiment into a deadly necessity. Nations poured resources into aircraft production, demanding engines that could climb higher, fly longer, and outlast the enemy. For Carl Rapp and his company, Rapp Motorenwerke, this was both an opportunity and a trial by fire. The German military looked to every manufacturer for engines, and Rapp's factory in Munich found itself under intense pressure. His designs were promising, but they weren't flawless. Pilots complained that some engines were prone to vibrations, overheating, or losing power at critical moments. In the brutal reality of war, these flaws could mean the difference between victory and disaster. Contracts were hard to maintain, and competitors with more stable products began to overshadow Rapp's company. Yet it wasn't all failure. In these years of hardship, the company gained valuable experience, refining designs, pushing the limits of engineering, and learning what it truly meant to build machines that could survive the rigors of combat. The factory became a crucible where every setback was melted down and reshaped into progress. Rapp's vision, to power the future of flight, remained alive, even when the odds were stacked against him. But the war also exposed the fragility of his venture. Investors grew restless, and cracks began to show in the company's foundations. While Carl Rapp was an engineer with immense passion, he was not a natural businessman. He struggled with the demands of management, finances, and large-scale production. By the final years of the conflict, Rapp Motorenwerke was at a crossroads: adapt or disappear. What Carl Rapp didn't know was that this moment of uncertainty would set the stage for a transformation that would outgrow him, giving birth to a name the world would never forget: BMW. While Karl Rapp fought to keep his engine company alive, another figure was shaping the destiny of BMW from a different direction: Gustav Otto. Unlike Rapp, Otto carried a famous name. He was the son of Nikolaus Otto, the inventor of the four-stroke engine, a breakthrough that changed the world of transportation forever. Gustav grew up surrounded by the hum of machines and the promise of invention. But instead of following directly in his father's footsteps with car engines, he turned his eyes toward the skies. In 1910, Otto founded Otto Flugmaschinenfabrik, an aircraft manufacturing company. His goal was bold: to build planes that could dominate the air at a time when flight was still viewed as experimental. and for a while he succeeded. His planes gained attention, and his factory in Munich became another bright spot in Germany's young aviation industry. Pilots trusted his designs, and the German military began to show interest in his machines. Yet, like Rapp, Otto faced the brutal realities of wartime business. Aircraft production was expensive, risky, and prone to setbacks. Crashes, failures, and technical issues often meant financial strain. Despite his famous heritage and early promise, Otto's company began to struggle. The pressures of war demanded scale and efficiency that small firms like his found hard to deliver. Still, the parallel between Otto and Rapp is striking. Both men were dreamers, chasing the frontier of aviation. Both operated in Munich, and both would face crises that pushed their companies to the edge of collapse. Yet their failures would intertwine, setting up a merger of fate. From their struggles, a stronger entity would rise, an identity that would soon bear the iconic initials BMW. By 1917, the pressure of war had left Karl Rapp's company on shaky ground. His engines, while innovative, could not consistently meet the demands of the military. Investors and partners began to lose faith, and Rapp himself was exhausted by the constant battles of management and design. That year, he stepped down from his own company, closing his chapter at the helm of Rapp Motorenwerke. Yet what looked like an ending for him became the beginning of something far greater. New leadership and new investors stepped in, determined to salvage the factory in Munich. They reorganized the business, shifted strategies, and most importantly, gave it a new identity. On July 21, 1917, Bayerische Motorenwerke GmbH, BMW, was officially born. The new name reflected its Bavarian roots, while signaling a bold future beyond the struggles of the past. The transformation wasn't just cosmetic. Under its new identity, the company focused on building high-performance aircraft engines. The most famous of these early creations was the BMW 3A, an inline-six engine that delivered excellent high-altitude performance. Unlike Rapp's earlier troubled designs, this engine impressed the German military and quickly established BMW as a serious contender in aviation technology. Alongside the new name came a new symbol, the now iconic BMW roundel. Inspired by the blue and white of the Bavarian flag, it became a lasting emblem of the company's identity. To the world, BMW was a fresh face with ambitious goals. But in truth, it was standing on the foundations Carl Rapp had laid and carried forward by the same hunger for progress. In just a few short years, Rapp Motorenwerke had vanished from the map. In its place rose BMW, a company destined to become one of the most recognizable names in the history of automobiles and aviation. When Karl Rapp resigned from his own company in 1917, history quietly began to move past him. BMW was rising under new leadership, its engines gaining fame in the skies, and its brand identity taking shape. But the man who had laid the foundation, who had dared to start the journey, slipped into the background. Unlike the great industrial titans whose names were etched in bold letters across history, Karl Rapp's story became more of a footnote, overshadowed by the dazzling success of BMW itself. After leaving Munich, Rapp moved to Switzerland, where he lived a quieter life, far from the roar of engines and the pressures of factory floors. For him, the dream of building an empire of aviation power plants had ended, but his contribution remained woven into the DNA of BMW. Without Rapp's courage to establish Rapp Motorenwerke, there would have been no platform for transformation, no company to carry the vision forward. In many ways, Rapp's story is one of bittersweet legacy. He was the spark, but not the flame. The company he created outgrew him, surpassing what he could have imagined, and becoming a global icon while his own name faded from public memory. Yet true history cannot ignore him. Every time the BMW roundel spins on a car wheel or shines on a motorcycle tank, it carries the spirit of that small Munich workshop and the man who believed engines could power the future. Carl Rapp died in 1962, long after BMW had become a household name around the world. Though he never lived to see the company's full global dominance in luxury cars and motorcycles, his fingerprints remain on its origin story. His legacy isn't in the fame he missed, It's in the empire he unknowingly set in motion. With Karl Rapp gone, the newly christened BMW wasted no time proving its worth. The company's first major breakthrough came with the BMW 3A aircraft engine, a six-cylinder powerhouse that set BMW apart from its struggling competitors. Unlike earlier engines that sputtered at high altitudes, the third A thrived where the air was thin, giving German pilots a decisive edge in climbing higher and staying aloft longer than their adversaries. Suddenly, the company that had once been on the brink of collapse was being hailed as a rising star in the aviation engineering. The success of the third A marked BMW's first true triumph, and it came at the perfect time. The German military praised its reliability, and the reputation of BMW as a builder of advanced engines spread quickly. It was more than just a technical achievement. It was proof that the company's new identity was built on substance, not just a name change. This engine carried BMW from the uncertainty of Rapp's era into the spotlight of Germany's wartime aviation efforts. But the end of World War I brought new challenges. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 placed strict limits on Germany's ability to produce aircraft engines, forcing BMW to rethink its future. Instead of fading, the company adapted. It turned to building motorcycle engines, railway brakes, and eventually entire motorcycles. That flexibility kept BMW alive during the difficult post-war years and laid the foundation for its future in automobiles. The triumph of the third A was more than a single success. It was a symbol. It showed that BMW could innovate under pressure, deliver performance that mattered, and survive against the odds. This resilience became part of BMW's DNA, carrying the company from its humble beginnings in Munich to the global stage it would one day dominate. Though Carl Rapp's departure marked the end of his direct involvement, the legacy of BMW was carried forward by a new generation of visionaries. Men like Franz Josef Popp, who became the company's first managing director, and Max Frisch, a brilliant engineer, took the reins and steered BMW into uncharted territory. Popp had the business acumen Rapp lacked, while Frisch possessed the technical genius to turn daring ideas into groundbreaking machines. Together, they transformed BMW from a struggling workshop into a serious industrial force. Frisch's redesign of the troubled aircraft engines into the successful BMW 3i proved the turning point. But he didn't stop there. He envisioned engines not just for the skies, but for the roads as well. Under his guidance, BMW began experimenting with motorcycle technology, leading to the creation of the iconic BMW R32 in 1923. This motorcycle wasn't just another product. It was a declaration that BMW could thrive beyond aviation. Its revolutionary boxer engine and shaft drive became hallmarks of BMW engineering, symbols of reliability and innovation. Meanwhile, Popp's leadership ensured that the company remained stable, attracting investments, managing growth, and guiding BMW through Germany's turbulent post-war economy. Where Rapp struggled with the weight of management, Popp excelled, giving BMW the structure it needed to expand. These visionaries didn't erase Rapp or Gustav Otto from history, but they built upon the foundation those men had laid. It was the combined efforts, the dreamers who started it, and the leaders who carried it forward, that allowed BMW to evolve into more than just an engine maker. By the mid-1920s, BMW was no longer defined by struggle, but by ambition, and the brand was ready to accelerate toward global recognition. From a modest workshop in Munich to one of the most iconic brands on earth, BMW's story is inseparable from the visionaries who sparked it. Carl Rapp may not have overseen BMW's golden age, but without his daring leap in 1913, there would have been no foundation to build upon. His willingness to gamble everything on aviation engines lit the first spark. Gustav Otto, with his aircraft factory, added another thread to the story, and together their struggles created the platform for BMW to rise under new leadership. What followed was nothing short of extraordinary. The company survived the collapse of war, reinvented itself under the pressures of peace, and carved a place in industries far beyond aviation. From the legendary BMW R32 motorcycle to the sleek luxury cars that would later dominate roads across the globe, BMW became more than a manufacturer. It became a symbol of engineering precision, German resilience, and timeless design. The roundel logo, once just a nod to Bavaria, grew into a global emblem of status and performance. Each car, motorcycle, or aircraft engine that bore it carried echoes of the past. The risks Rapp took, the ambition Otto showed, and the brilliance later leaders brought to the table. Today, when someone sees a BMW on the road, they aren't just looking at a machine. They're looking at over a century of evolution, one that began with men who dared to dream at a time when engines were fragile, uncertain creations. Carl Rapp's name may not be as celebrated as Benz or Ford, but his legacy lives every time a BMW engine roars to life. The enduring story of BMW isn't just about cars, it's about how vision, struggle, and persistence can create something that outlives its founders and continues to shape the world.